All right. In this session, we're going to talk with Raymond Smith, who is a University of California, Riverside alumnus. And Raymond is a student that I had the privilege of working with at UCR. Raymond was a bioengineering major, graduated from UCR in the winter quarter of 2018. And I wanted to spend some time chatting with Raymond and sharing with other students a little bit about Raymond's story. Um, so without me going into about Raymond and things that I want him to share, I'm just going to go ahead and welcome Raymond and have him tell a little bit about his experience at UCR. So when he arrived to UCR, major, and then from there we'll get into some of the bigger things about his focus and interest in medical school. So Raymond, when did you come to UCR? What was your major? And then maybe how you got involved with our office.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, I went to community college first. I went to Crafton Hills College right after high school just to save money and really because I was paying for college myself. And through that process, I was able to get a couple associate's degrees, so multiple sciences and mathematics. From there, I transferred in the summer of 2016 over to UCR and I decided to do bioengineering. Really had like this heart for engineering in that background. I had a high school calculus teacher that really pushed me into that engineering field, and my dad also has his degree in electrical engineering. So I was going that route, and then all of a sudden, through my role in engineering, I ended up having some back problems that kind of pushed me into that medical field aspect. My mom's a nurse, but it wasn't that real nudge until I specifically had a back injury that really pushed me into the medical field.
I remember you coming into the office and you were still experiencing or just getting over some back issues. And I remember that now as you're talking about that and that experience. So thankfully, you've come away from that, probably not as much, or hopefully not as much pain as you were in. But that experience kind of opened up your eyes to your own health and healthcare. And so maybe from that experience, and while you were at UCR, what are some of the things that you were engaged with clinically or service to continue to further your interest and exploration in healthcare?
Awesome. Yeah, for me, it was that back injury really portrayed like my intervertebral disc disease was something that got me fascinated with medicine. And so from there, I started shadowing and actually first started volunteering at Redlands Community Hospital. And so I lived in Yucaipa at the time, and going to Redlands was something that was decently close instead of driving to Riverside for campus and then like kind of staying there for volunteering. So I volunteered at Redlands Community Hospital from 2016 until beginning of 2019 when we moved to the Midwest. And during that process, I really got engaged in the healthcare field, finding out what does a PA do, what does an EMT do, what does a nurse do, what does a doctor do. And it was through that process of finding out that like a doctor had this was a lifelong learner and really had this bigger role to play that I really wanted to shadow a physician. So I remember going into my visit with Dr. Jones, who was my primary care physician, and I was there for my back pain and just to get kind of like a refill on my muscle relaxers and see like what we can do for more so like physical therapy or any other types of therapy that I can do in order to alleviate my back pain. And so I started shadowing different physicians, and that was kind of my role getting into the medical field and like my clinical exposure at that time.
So having some experiences outside the class, looking at a variety of different health professions, and through that exploration, finding that medicine is probably more of what you're interested in due to your ability to do a lot, right? So be able to have involvement in a lot of different areas, that continuous learning and clinical professional development piece. So as you're having moving through your own health experience and you are getting your clinical experience to explore health careers, you're at UCR pursuing your engineering degree. And
Mhm.
so as an engineering major, were there any similarities, any congruence between what you were doing in the classroom and out in the field?
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I would say that there was some congruence as far as it goes. I was really liking the aspect of learning a lot of like that medical, that biology aspect, and then also the engineering. Some engineering mind was something that still fascinates me to this day. And so, like for example, we took tissue engineering, and then I found tissue engineering interesting because then it could deal with plastic surgery or biomaterials and how those biomaterials is dealing with like orthopedic surgery. And it's all these different classes that we were taking. And like for example, we took quantitative physiology, we took circulation physiology, and dealing with like that calculus behind everything was something that I found fascinating because I'm not only going to be able to relate to my job as a physician, but it's also something that got me more interested in the medical field. And so, on top of that, I also, besides shadowing, volunteering at the hospital, I was a spinal cord injury researcher. And I did that at two different labs, and I was able to conduct surgery on rats. I was also able to do the spinal cord injury research and how that affected and as far as it goes for the different regions of the spine. And so that was something that got me even more fascinated with it because it related to my back injury and also kind of family and friends that had spinal cord injuries or had other back injuries and how all of these things were just intertwined.
So, schoolwork, learning in your research, your clinical experience, your engineering courses, your life science, pre med, prerequisite courses. So, you were staying really busy, um, had a full plate. What are some of the resources that you utilized on campus that allowed you to be successful in and outside of the classroom and that you were able to keep everything together?
Good question. Yeah, for me, it was my first year transferring in. What really got me intertwined in the campus, because I was going from a campus that was maybe 2,000 students to 25, 26,000 students. And so I was a part of the honors program at first. I had a student ambassador, really a mentor that helped me get involved in the research program. And this is when I was kind of like finding out that, okay, I'm kind of interested in medicine and going through this process. Okay, how can I get involved in research? How can I get involved in some other extracurricular activities? And then once I found out that I was super involved into the medical field and this is what I wanted to do, I started coming to HPAC. And so then I met with Charlie and we went over different things in terms of like my application, but then also what do I need to do in the future in order to apply to medical school? And so that helped me out a lot. The other thing that helped me out was I worked at the school as a lead peer mentor for engineering. And so that kind of helped me with build my mentorship skills, but also build those leadership skills as well. And so that helped me get it intertwined. And then we were also on top of the whole entire engineering extracurriculars, those clubs, those organizations, and we organized them. And we basically were able to manage like what they can and can't do. And then their funding also had to go through us as well. And so it was something where we had an oversight on all these different clubs and organizations to where I was able to become involved in the Biomedical Engineering Society. I was able to become involved in these different societies, but also interact with a whole bunch of different people to make my stay and my involvement at UCR more successful.
Yeah. So taking all of those pieces together and utilizing them for you to be successful, let's apply that toward applying to medical school. So, what was that process like for you? You're applying to medical school at this time. Are you in California? Are you out of state? So, take us through of how you maybe identified schools through the application process and what that looked like for you.
Question. So I applied twice. I applied once when I was in California. It was a time when my wife, because I'm married, my wife was pregnant at the time, and it was just a lot. It was overwhelming. And so I didn't actually get my application out until October. And so I only applied to five schools. I'm like, it's kind of like a wishy-washy application cycle. And so then I kind of took a step back, and it was something where when I applied that cycle, I was looking at it in terms of, is this something that I absolutely want to do? Is this something that 100% that I need to do? Do I need to become a physician? And at that time, I wasn't sure. So I kind of resented my applications and I looked back at it and I started to become involved as a teacher. We moved over to the Midwest and I started working as a teacher in both high school and middle school, specifically in math and science. And so through this process of taking the next year, really finding out, okay, is this something that I want to do because me and my family are going to be like better off? Like, am I going to be able to have this time with my family, that time management? And then through teaching that first year, I started working 70 hours a week. And I was like, okay, if I can do this and I can manage 70 hours a week as a teacher, I know that I can manage it as a physician. And I know that ultimately my goal is to become a physician, but I was kind of just putting it off in the background. And so the second time when I applied, moved out here to the Midwest in Indiana. And so through this process, I started speaking with Charlie in January. I believe it was January. And then we went and then I applied in early June. And so applied there, was studying for my MCAT while I was working 70 hours a week. My wife was working full time at night. And so I studied from 2 in the morning till 7 in the morning. It was something that I knew I needed to just get through and pound it through because there wasn't any other aspects that I was going to be able to, any other time that I was going to be able to do it. And so that was kind of like my process. And Charlie really helped as far as it goes for the application process and what I was doing while I was here in Indiana.
So, as an alumnus, you moved across the country. Um, you had been married. You're having your second child. Is that right?
So we have two now. My son Matthew is 2 years old. My daughter Zoe, she will be 6 months in 2 weeks.
Okay. So it would have been probably Matthew was there and Zoe was on her way for working through your reapplication, checking your activities, personal statement, talking about that. You're researching a couple of schools in the Midwest and on the East Coast. You apply, you interview, and you're working at the same time.
Mhm,
Pandemic happens,
mhm.
interviewing, and where are you now? It's February 2021. What does life look like for you now and moving throughout this year?
Good question. Yeah, for me, so as far as it goes, after applying, I because of the pandemic, I actually had to move my MCAT from April until July. And so it's something where I was like ready to take it in April, and then all of a sudden I had to move it to July. So the medical schools didn't get my application until the beginning of August. I applied to 12 schools. I've had 3 interviews. I have 2 acceptances. So I have one at Indiana University. I have another one at Northeast Ohio Medical University. And then I'm waiting on the military medical school or USIS in order to hear back, but I won't hear back until March at the earliest.
Okay, so next month, which not too far off. So as you're, kind of wrapping up, hoping to hear from you soon, but you have 2 acceptances. So as you're moving forward, is there any advice that you would want to give other students that are, getting ready to approach this process, or maybe have some of the same experiences, shared experiences that you have? How would you, share some guidance to those students?
Yeah, I definitely would say that I have a few words of wisdom here. As far as it goes, if you're a non-traditional student, and you have limited time, there's always something where you can push back your time frame or extend that as far as it goes. But if you put your mind to it, there's something that I know that you'll be able to accomplish it as well. And so there's those two pieces. When I'm looking at it in terms of what schools you're applying for, as a non-traditional student, I only applied to 12 schools because I had a limited possibility of what schools I could apply for. I've been working 70 hours per week as a teacher, and so I knew that I wasn't going to be able to take more classes. And so what hindered me from applying to so many medical schools, and I probably would have applied to like 25, was the aspect that I was only from my bioengineering degree, I only had a certain amount of prerequisites that were met. And a lot of them out here in the Midwest, now that I'm here, is a lot more so of the semester system. So maybe I met the first quarter, but I didn't take a second quarter, so I don't meet that semester requirement. And so then it would be approaching those schools, talking with those schools, and seeing, does that quarter class meet our semester requirement, or do you need to take another class? And so I would recommend that if you're at UCR right now, I would keep on going along with that, whatever that series is, if you take another quarter. Like medical schools are starting to do away with a lot of the prerequisites and they're going to look at the MCAT instead, but there are a lot of schools that are still looking at their prerequisites. So that's what I would do. I would start taking more classes that you could take, the better. If you can take genetics, maybe 2 quarters of that and things like that, or maybe even take like a human anatomy and physiology course if it's at a community college or wherever it's at. And then the last thing that I would recommend as far as it goes would not only be looking at your school and being realistic with that, but also making sure that you're telling your story, like you know why you want to become a physician when you're applying, and really just showing your story in terms of that aspect. Because as long as you're showing your story and like why you wanted to pursue medicine, that's going to stand out as far as it goes because it's your story. And so I feel like the biggest thing between my first time that I applied and my second time I applied is that I knew 100% without a shadow of a doubt why I was applying and why I needed to become a physician. If you don't know those specific stories or that aha moment of like when it was that you wanted to become a physician, then I wouldn't recommend applying this cycle.
Mhm. So, being thoughtful about where you're going to apply, looking at the prerequisites. We know we're in Southern California, we have medical schools throughout the state, but for somebody such as yourself, which there are students that apply nationally, so they're looking at schools in the Midwest, the Northeast. A lot of those schools forget about the quarter system at times. And off, so now and then they may question if there's one course, let's say biochemistry, they may like to see additional courses like the 110 series, the 110 A, B, and C.
Mm.
Um, you mentioned human anatomy and physiology at a community college, which can be a great preparation as well. And then, in addition to that, what I heard you say is just really understanding your experiences that you've had, your clinical experiences or research and service experiences. And when you approach the application, being able and ready to write about why you're interested in the field of healthcare, maybe specifically being a physician, and then getting very granular to maybe even the mission or the purpose of the school that you're applying to.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say adding one more thing on top of that would be really understanding your story. Because if you're like, I'm applying to medical school because I like science and I want to help people. Okay. As an engineer, I like science and I could help more people than I could as a physician. Those two things are portrayed in multiple jobs. And so really understanding what's the difference between what you want to do now and why you want to become a physician. And like the difference between for me for engineering and becoming a physician is the aspect where as a physician I'm able to alleviate people's pain that I was in with my back injury. And so that was the main purpose and the distinguisher between me going from engineering to medicine.
Oh, yeah. So for you, there's really no second guess. You know this is right for you, and really the way that you approach this part, I think, is resonates with a lot of students that these are not jobs. These are careers when we're getting into medicine, or dentistry, or pharmacy, or podiatry, or veterinary medicine. These careers that require a significant amount of education and career preparation, residency, and you're putting in your money, you're putting in your time. So really important to do research before you get to that application or secondary application stage, so that you know that you're able to address the prompts for the schools, and that you know that you're entering the right field for yourself.
Mhm.
So, all right, Raymond, it's been great talking with you. Congratulations on your 2 acceptances, possibly more. I think it's always exciting when you've been accepted. You know where you're probably going in the fall, but at least you know you're going somewhere, and that's really exciting. And congratulations, and we're really proud of you at UCR. And best wishes to you wherever you decide to go to medical school this fall.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate all the help from HPAC, especially as a non-traditional student afterwards. It really helped out as far as it goes with the application. And I definitely recommend everybody going to HPAC to figure out how Charlie can help you out or anybody else at the HPAC department.
Great. Thank you, Raymond.